So I've been away for a week, and while Liverpool's Europa League hopes have been extinguished in that time, there's still a slim chance that they can go on and lift the Premier League title. Obviously, they're up against Arsenal and Manchester City for that honour, and really Jurgen Klopp's side know that they probably have to win all 5 of the remaining games to even stand a chance. And the first place they start to do that is by going to Everton on Wednesday for the Merseyside derby, which has typically been a tough one for Jurgen Klopp and his team down the years. Now, I say that his record is actually quite favourable at Goodison Park. He's been there on 7 occasions and never lost, but there are only 2 victories in there and 5 draws, with 4 of those being 0-0. So it shows you that Liverpool haven't had all their own way down the years, and a couple of those draws have been quite damaging actually in title races. So it's worth considering this one a tough fixture, particularly, as I say, because Liverpool probably do need to get wins on board, or 5 wins on board between now and the end of the season, to have any chance of capitalising on an Arsenal or Manchester City slip up that could give them the Premier League title. Now, for Jurgen Klopp, as I say, it's a tough fixture, so a tough selection generally speaking. He has to get this one right in areas, especially in attacking areas where you could argue that he hasn't done in previous seasons. But it's also difficult because for the first time in a very, very long time, he's actually got quite a lot of options in his squad. That injury crisis that had decimated Liverpool for so long is finally eased now, and he's got a lot of options across the pitch, as I say. So that makes the picking the team much more difficult than it might have been even 2 or 3 weeks ago. Now, he made 6 changes for the Fulham game at the weekend. That's the most he's ever made between Premier League games, actually. The 6 changes from the Crystal Palace to the Fulham game. So that shows you that he's got a willingness, even in this crunch time of the season, to make changes and really mix things up. So, as I say, I think it probably makes this a really difficult team selection to predict, but I'm going to have a go at it. I'm going to see if I can pick my selection for this game against Everton. As usual, I don't expect that I will get all 11 right, but I think I've got decent justification for the picks I've gone with in my starting 11 for Goodison Park on Wednesday. As usual, I'm going to ask you in the comments, maybe even before you watch the video, let me know what your starting 11 would be, and perhaps I can influence your thinking with my arguments on the players here, and you can come back to your comment and let me know if I've changed your mind on any of that. Now, I'm going to start as ever with the goalkeeper, and this is a really easy pick at the moment, isn't it? Alisson Becker is back fit, and he is Liverpool's first choice goalkeeper, arguably the best goalkeeper in the world, so he definitely is straight back into the starting 11 for this one. Now, it's interesting that Liverpool have only kept 1 clean sheet in the last 11 now. A lot of those, of course, have been with Kevin Kelleher. Even though he was playing well, he conceded. He seemed to concede in every game. Liverpool were giving up a lot of chances, weren't they, in recent games? And as I said, that's something they'll want to improve on going forward. And if it's going to be a tight game again against Everton, then it's important that Liverpool at least keep a clean sheet. There's been a lot of 0-0s in this fixture, and if you want to turn them into 1-0s or 2-0s, you've got to keep that clean sheet, haven't you? So that's an area that Alisson will be really keen to impose on his defence, that you need to keep a clean sheet in this one if it's going to be a really, really tight game, as we expect. Now, move forward into the defence and into right back, which again I think is a straightforward pick, to be honest. No Conor Bradley fit at the moment, so it has to be Trent Alexander-Arnold, doesn't it? I think a nod towards that was given with the fact he only did 80 minutes at Fulham, just given a little bit of a rest at the end, just to recognise the fact that he's going to have to get through a lot of football in this period with Conor Bradley out of action at the moment. Now, there's of course a debate to be had over Trent Alexander-Arnold possibly moving into midfield, but I don't think that debate will happen over the remaining 5 games of this season. It looks like Jurgen Klopp definitely sees him as that right back option between now and May, and it's totally understandable really when you see his performances since he came back in. He's been really, really influential, hasn't he, and hasn't really missed a beat in terms of his ability to carve teams open with his extraordinary passing range. So great to have him back, and as I say, that debate over whether he's a midfielder or a fullback, that can wait till next season. It's something for the new manager maybe to think about. Now, moving to the centre halves now, and again, I think these are probably straightforward picks. I mean, the obvious one is Virgil van Dijk, the captain. He absolutely comes in, doesn't he, and starts this one, no doubt about that. And alongside him, there has been a little bit of a competition there between Konate and Quansah recently, but with Quansah starting in the Fulham game, I think it's going to be Konate for this one. He's had a decent rest there at Fulham, and I also think he's important in a game like this where it's going to be tight. Everton are going to focus on set pieces as much as they can, aren't they? And they're going to go for aerial balls and try and create that scrap, which Sean Dyche's teams tend to do. And I think Konate, the one thing he has over Quansah is definitely a little bit more power in the air, little bit better at winning his aerial duels, as good as Quansah has been this season, by the way. I think that Konate just has that little bit of aerial power over him, and so he really does make sense in a game like this where Everton are going to try and make the most of set-piece opportunities or any opportunity to put the ball into the box to either Calvert-Lewin or Beto. So for me, I've gone with Konate alongside Virgil van Dijk. And at left-back, I think this has been made into a difficult pick because of Liverpool's schedule. As I said, Jurgen Klopp not been scared to make changes, but one area where he hasn't made an awful lot of changes is at left back recently, where Andy Robertson has played an awful lot of minutes recently. Now I look at his last 10 days and he's played 45 minutes, 90 minutes, 79 minutes, and then 90 again at Fulham at the weekend. And I just think you can't keep asking him to go to the well again. As much as I love that width down the left-hand side that he provides, and I would trust him to provide a little bit more attacking quality than maybe Kostas Tsimikas, to be honest, I just think Liverpool probably need to make a change there because of what Robertson has got through, and for that reason I've gone with Joe Gomez. I just think, like I say, that width that Tsimikas will provide as a natural left footer, and that attacking impetus against a defensive team in Everton, and they are going to play this defensively, I think that's quite clear. I do think you miss something with having a right footer on the left, but that said, I just think there needs to be a rotation, and I think Joe Gomez is just a little bit more secure on the defensive side. And let's not forget as well that I'm saying about width and the importance of that, and that can be an issue at times when you use a right footer at left back. But Liverpool played an awful lot of very, very good games with Joe Gomez at left back, and he didn't miss a beat in terms of their attacking threat in that time. So he's very capable of being part of a Liverpool side that does well in that regard. So I'm absolutely comfortable in putting him in. And he also gives you, again, like I said about Konate, having that additional height of Gomez and aerial power that he has over Robertson, that just gives you a little bit more security, I think, around set pieces and the aerial threat that Everton are going to pose. So I think for me, that's the reason I've gone with Joe Gomez at left back. Now I'm going to move into midfield now, and again, I think this is a really, really difficult area to sort of predict, really, in terms of what the manager's going to do. He has an awful lot of options there again. Everyone is back fit in that midfield area except Thiago, of course, who only played 5 minutes this season, unfortunately. But one of the problems he's got at the moment, I think, Jurgen Klopp, is that he's got a mixture of players who've maybe played too much football during that injury crisis, and the ones who are coming back have maybe not got the rhythm that they had earlier in the season when they were fully fit. So he's really got a collection of midfield options that is vast in terms of number, but nobody's absolutely flying at the moment and playing in the best version of themselves. So that kind of makes things difficult, and I think that's reflected in my picks. I'm not entirely convinced I've got this one right, but we'll give it a go anyway. And the first pick is in holding midfield, and of course Endo is, I think, early in the season would have been an absolutely natural pick here. I think he gives you that aerial protection, he wins headers, he's played at centre half before, he gets around, breaks up play and allows you to stay on top. But I just think his form at the moment is maybe not the best. We saw he got dragged off at half time against Crystal Palace after a really poor first half performance, and I thought there was some green shoots for him against Fulham, but I thought first half wasn't particularly great in that game. But he did show a little bit more second half, and maybe he's getting slightly back to his best, but I still think he's just, because of the way he's playing at the moment, it's not his absolute best. I think there's a case to make that he's not an automatic pick for this, and I think maybe Jurgen Klopp might go down a different route, and that is to put Alexis McAllister in there. Now McAllister got a rest against Fulham, came on as a substitute, and again he's a player who's not been in his best form in this last couple of weeks or so. I think it's no coincidence he played so much football and has endured a dip off the back of that, and also that Liverpool have not been great when McAllister's not been great, because he has been the heartbeat of that team in recent weeks in the build up to this little dip in form, and so the fortunes of the team as a whole have kind of mirrored him as an individual, really, and hopefully he can get back to his absolute best. And I do think there's value as well in using him in the holding midfield role in a game like this. Liverpool will expect to go there and dominate possession and try and pick Everton apart, and I think they need someone in that deeper role to be able to take the ball, who's slightly more comfortable than Endo, has got a bit more of a passing range about him, and can really fire the ball into those sort of gaps in between the lines, although there won't be very many gaps. I think McAllister is very good at that, and I think getting as many pure footballers on the pitch rather than some of your destructive players is really the way to go in a game like this. So for me, I think McAllister, I do tend to prefer him these days in that advanced role, and he has been so good there in sort of relatively recent games. But I just think in this game where you're going to dominate possession and Everton are going to give you the ball, just get as many people who can play those passes into tight areas, and I think McAllister's creativity will still be really useful even in that deep position, because Liverpool should be so pushed up the pitch that even the deepest midfielder should be really able to affect things, putting balls into the final third. So he's my pick in the holding midfield role for that reason. And again, moving into these two sort of eights ahead of that, again, I think there's issues in terms of form. Nobody's absolutely flying at the moment, not really sort of easy picks, and I've already obviously taken McAllister out of the equation by picking him in holding midfield. Now I'll start on the right hand side of the two midfielders, or two more advanced midfielders, and I thought Harvey Elliott did a really decent job against Fulham. I thought he was bright, his pressing was good, he used the ball well, he created threat. But I think in this game against Everton, I keep going back to set piece threat and how physical they'll be in it. I thought even though Elliott did well against Fulham, I think this is going to be a different sort of game, and for that reason Jurgen Klopp will probably want a little bit more height in that midfield than Elliott can provide, and a bit more physicality really. And for that reason I've gone with Dominic Szoboszlai. Now I must admit, I think he's kind of out of form at the moment really. He's had a bit of a dip since being so impressive in the early part of the season. I think the two injuries back to back haven't really helped him, but the one thing you can say is, even if it's not absolutely going for him on the ball, is that Dominic Szoboszlai puts himself about. He covers the ground. He won't allow counters to develop because he's so quick. He's got that pace over Elliott as well as the physical power. And as I say, the physical power is going to be important as well, because Everton are going to try and swing balls into the box. He can defend set pieces better than Elliott. And as I say, if it's not quite going for him on the ball, maybe you make the change to an Elliott late on. But I just think in this game as a starting point, you need Szoboszlai on the pitch for that physicality, his ability to stop Everton countering, his ability to stop set pieces as well. So I've gone with him on that right hand side, and hopefully it's a game where he can come back to a little bit of his better form as well, because as I say, things not really going for him of late, but it'd be good if he can have a strong finish to the season. That would be massively helpful for Liverpool. Now that just leads the left hand side of the 2-8s, and obviously Ryan Gravenberch I thought did well against Fulham. Great goal, which will be very, very important for his confidence going forward. And I think he's unfairly maligned for me, Gravenberch. I think people forget that he's such a young player. He's still only 21 years old, and so there's a lot more to come from him. Yes, there's inconsistency there, but you should expect that from a young player. But that said, that inconsistency is there. I will recognise that is the case. And I do think, again, like Elliott, is a young player where, you put him in a game like this where it can get frustrating, and maybe, he tries too many risks or takes too many risks, and, doesn't have that sort of the sense in the game experience in what this game's going to be like. And for that reason, I've gone with Curtis Jones on that left-hand side of the 2-8s. I think for a couple of reasons, really. Again, he's not really hit his best form since the injury he's had, but I'm sure he will get there pretty soon, or he needs to. There's not very many games left this season, and he generally, when he is in form and he's getting back fitness now again, he wins his duels and he keeps the ball. And I think in games like this, where you have to win your battles and you have to keep the ball, you don't want to give Everton a sniff. And so, getting someone in there who typically is over 90% in his passing accuracy, I think is really going to be useful. As I say, wins his battles in the centre of the pitch, and he's a scouser. He knows what this game is all about, doesn't he? So I think he can offer an awful lot as a starter. As I say, Liverpool are going to have options in terms of changing things in that midfield if they do go with this as a starting option, or whatever combination Jurgen Klopp picks. Actually, you're going to have so many options to change it from the bench, so that is a good thing. But for me, that's the midfield that should start, and maybe can get Liverpool in an advantageous position to maybe pick Everton off. Now, again, moving into the forward line, it's very similar to midfield in the sense that I don't think anyone is in absolutely unbelievable form. So you could pick any of the 5 options there really and be sort of happy with your picks. I really do think it's difficult, but these are the 3 I've gone with anyway. So I'm starting on the right hand side. Now, I don't think this is a difficult one. Mohamed Salah may not be in his best form, but you can't give him 2 rests back to back, surely. The idea of giving him a rest against Fulham is the idea that he's going to be fresh for this one. He's going to be ready. He's going to be able to get himself back in form. And Liverpool needing to catch a little bit of form between now and the end of the season, because I think it's been a bit of a struggle for him since the injury. I mean, how many players have I said that about in this video already? I think it's the combination, isn't it, of players being overplayed and players coming back from injuries and not being at their absolute best or the sharpest version of themselves. And Salah's absolutely one of the group of the latter, but he does score goals. He is a threat. If he can find any form in this game, he's Liverpool's biggest goal threat, isn't he? And he's got 7 goals in 10 games against Everton, so he knows how to find the back of the net in a game like this. So, I just don't think you can justify leaving him on the bench again, and I fully expect that he will be in the starting 11 on that right wing position. Now, alongside him, I'll maybe start with the centre forward role, and Darwin Núñez, another one who he's been rested, hasn't he, in the Fulham game. I thought he was quite poor when he came off the bench in that game, if I'm being totally honest, but I just think he's rested, he's ready for a game like this. When he's at the full energy and the full best version of himself, he can cause chaos, can't he? He's got the physicality to get to turn Everton round, that pace, that getting in behind that will be really helpful. Getting the ball up the pitch is an element of his game that's really, really improved this season. I think he can be helpful to that. And I think, even though his form has not been great recently, Liverpool just tend to take more shots when he's on the pitch. Yes, he might miss some of them, but I do think, in a game where chances have tended to be hard to come by generally, I think getting him on the pitch and hoping that he does finish off the chances he gets is probably the best way to go. And as I say, he's been rested, so he can be ready to absolutely press the life out of Everton's defence, because you get that as a bare minimum from him. Like I say, as much as he's frustrated this season, and I personally, when I've spoken about him in videos, have said sometimes his form or his performances haven't been good enough. He's still got 31 goal contributions in 49 appearances. The biggest frustration is that we all know and think that could be better, but it does show you that he's not totally useless, is he? He really has. He's scored a few. He's set up quite a lot as well. And so that all-round forward play, when it clicks for him, is absolutely there. The frustration and the hope is that he will get better at putting it all together, and maybe next season will completely explode. We'll have to see whether that happens under a different manager. But I think he has done enough in this season, even if it's not happening for him recently, to be in the starting 11 in a game like this. And as ever, it's an opportunity to get the latest goal, to get the latest assist, or play a role in Liverpool beating the rivals and keeping this title run on track. Now, I'll finish off with the left wing, and so many options, isn't there, for this left-hand side. I mean, I've left Luis Diaz, Cody Gakpo and Diogo Jota, and all three of them can play that left wing role absolutely no problem, and I'm sure they're massively in contention for this game. So it's going to be an interesting selection on that front. But I've gone with Diogo Jota for this one. Now, that may seem harsh on the two players left out. I think Luis Diaz has worked his socks off recently, hasn't he? And some of his goal threat has actually been decent recently. And Cody Gakpo, I think, in a period where Liverpool's front line really has been collectively quite out of form, I think Cody Gakpo has been the best player of the lot, if you ask me. And so it would seem maybe a little bit harsh, but I do think Gakpo in the pecking order is still a little bit lower down, isn't he, than of the five. I think he is the fifth choice, really. And I think the reason I want Jota in my starting 11 for this game is that he only played 74 minutes against Fulham, so he's available, I reckon, to do at least another 75. Could even do the 90 in this one. But the reason I want him in more than anything other than freshness or anything to do with that is because I just think in a game like this where it's scrappy, it's awful, it's going to be a war more than it's going to be a football match. These games at Goodison Park are generally awful to watch, and very little football gets played, and it's scrappy. You need someone who can score a scrappy goal. And I know he's missed a couple of chances since he's coming back into the team, but I think we saw against Fulham that his sharpness is returning, and he is someone who gets you scruffy goals. That Fulham goal typified it for me, really. He gets a little bit of space on his left foot. It's not his strongest foot, and he managed to just squeeze it past the goalkeeper because he gets enough power on it, gets a clean strike on his wrong foot, and he's just a great finisher, isn't he? And I think it'd be great to have him as an option off the bench maybe, but I still think just keep him on the pitch for as long as you can. He's probably your biggest goal threat at the moment in terms of, Salah really not quite in his best form, and I think Jota is just a little bit of sharpness lacking, which I think we started to see against Fulham. So I'm hoping that can be a big step forward for him, and that in this game he can show what he's all about, which is sniffing out goals, even if they're messy goals, they're not attractive goals. He just gets the ball in the back of the net, and Liverpool need that 4-0-0s, as I've said in Jurgen Klopp's 7 trips to Goodison Park, and they don't want another one because that really would put them out of the title race, in my opinion. So for me, get your goal scorers on the pitch, the ones who scored the most goals this season, and that is the front three I've picked, and Jota is a big part of that. He would have scored a lot more goals this season if he hadn't had that injury as well. So got to get him on there to get one in off his backside or in off his shin. He's absolutely that sort of player, isn't he? So that completes my starting 11 to face Everton. Obviously some difficult picks in there. As I say, Jurgen Klopp's actually got a squad to pick from for once, so it's it's really, really tricky on this, and I think with, as I say, not everyone's in form at the moment, so that makes it even more difficult. So let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know what your starting 11 for this game would look like, and whether you think Liverpool are going to get a better result than they usually do at Goodison Park in a title race, which is generally a 0-0 draw. Do you think Liverpool can win this one? Are you buoyed by what you saw against Fulham? A bit more confident that Liverpool can finish with a winning run and maybe that will win them the title? Let me know, as I say in the comments. Always good to hear from you guys, and if you can like and subscribe as well, it's always a massive, massive help to the channel in terms of growing things. I know I've been off for a week, but now we're getting back into it and full throttle between now and the running, and so many games to come, isn't there? So it's a really, really exciting time, and hopefully a glorious finish to the season for Liverpool. But I'll leave it here for now, and just say that I'll be back after the game at Goodison Park. I'll be back for the press conference coverage as well, actually, and then after the game at Goodison Park for my match review. So I'll see you soon.